Talk to the board and it will talk to you. Everyone has some sort of internal dialogue when it's their turn to move. Most players stare blankly at the board and think, I go there and they go there and I go there and they go there. It's pure calculation, usually based on fear, aggression, or simply the desire to find something, anything, that seems reasonable. However, if I stopped you from calculating and asked, can you verbally break this position down for me? The odds are that your answer wouldn't be lecture worthy. Make no mistake about this. At any given moment, you should be able to lecture other players about the pros and cons of any position you reach. And if you can't put your thumb on the pulse of the position, if you don't know what both sides need to accomplish, then how are you going to find the right move? It's like asking for driving directions to an unknown place. This is why most players feel lost at sea. They feel they don't know what's going on, and so try to patch up the cracks by looking for threats and/or looking for ways to create them. They know something's wrong, something's missing, but they don't know what to do about it, and this creates a feeling of powerlessness. Trust me when I tell you that it doesn't have to be this way. It's time to get a bit crazy. Once you master the imbalances, and if you read this book from beginning to end, you will master the imbalances, it will be time to get up close and personal with the board. In general, you can figure out a good deal about any position by doing the following. First up is the Armageddon Discourse. Make sure you are aware of any crude threats by the opponent and also do a quick search for any basic tactical themes that might be present. This is usually done subconsciously by players 1800 and up. However, if you are lower rated, are prone to blunders, or feel that you have serious tactical issues, then it's a good idea to take a few moments to get on top of this stuff. Once you've made sure that Thor's hammer isn't going to descend on your head, it's time for loftier considerations. Ascertain the imbalances for both sides, then ask the board in an internal dialogue what move or series of moves tries to take advantage of these factors. Pretty simple. Let me stress once again that you should not be after plans per se. Don't allow yourself to get distracted by the P word, but rather moves that cater to the imbalances. As we've seen, when you do this, plans often seem to materialize by themselves. Let's see how the imbalances can dictate the course that both players take in a game. Gata Kamsky versus Veselin Topalov, Sofia 2009. Kamsky's white. White's dialogue. Black is going to play bishop g7 and tie me down to the defense of the e5 pawn. My main pluses are the hole in f6, that his g6 created, a lead in development, and his central king, so I have to get something going before he rectifies those problems with a simple bishop g7 and castles. Bishop g5, eyeing f6, doesn't accomplish anything after bishop e7, since after bishop f6, bishop takes he takes f6, knight g8, wins a pawn. That leaves me with queen d2 instead, followed by bishop h6. The trade of dark square bishops might highlight the weakness of f6 and also leave black's king a bit loose. Or the other option is pawn to c4, trying to rip open the position. Queen d2, bishop g7, bishop h6, takes, queen takes, knight f5, queen to d2, knight h4 isn't much, so I'll give c4 a go and try to generate some action before his king gets castled. So c4 is played in the game. Black dialogue. This move, which tries to open up the position, makes a lot of sense. However, if he captures on d5, my knight will find a great home there. And there is a bishop versus knight battle, so I want my knights to be as well placed as possible. Since none of this worries me, I'll continue with my intended bishop g7 and force his hand. Of course, he can chop on d5 and stop me from castling with bishop c5, but what if I simply step back with bishop f8? My king would be quite happy on g7, and I can't be worse with a knight sitting on that magnificent d5 square. Bishop to g7. White's dialogue. He's about to castle, so I have to follow through with c takes d5. C takes d5, knight takes d5. Black dialogue. Of course, my king's in the center, so... Oh, bishop c5 is played. Ooh, black king castle. Black dialogue. Of course, my king's in the center, so I'm not going to do anything crazy like knight takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, bishop b5 check, and I would have to resign. The queen is lost. However, I have no problem whatsoever with the exchange of dark square bishops. Oh, with the exchange or dark square bishops. Of bishop f8. White's dialogue. I'm not going to take on f8 since that would help him get his king to g7. Instead, I'll try queen to c1, intending to take on f8, followed by queen h6. Black dialogue. After queen c1, black dialogue. An interesting move. He intends to chop on f8, and then after king takes f8, stop my planned king g7 with queen h6 check. I'm also not high on bishop takes c5, queen takes c5, rook c8, rook ac1. It's not the end of the world, but he's managed to stop me from getting my king to safety. Why give him anything? Seems to me that the problem with queen c1 is that he's sticking his queen on a file that my rook can occupy. Yes, after rook c8, bishop takes f8 in this position. After rook c8, bishop takes f8, I have a little tactic. So rook c8 is played, then bishop takes f8, knight to d4. White dialogue. Well, what can I do? When a guy plays well, he plays well. He didn't let me achieve any of my goals. Queen to d1. Knight takes e2 check, queen takes e2, king takes f8, rook ac1, king to g7. White dialogue. Okay, I have absolutely nothing. Time to tighten up and make a draw. Indeed, the game ended in a draw in 43 moves. Note how all the thoughts of each player were centered on the imbalances, and all the variations were also dedicated to the imbalances. This kind of logical breakdown of a position works for grandmasters, and it will work for you too.